you started using the website. This was created in September 2017 for the University of Maine students, especially focusing on students of Professor Ann Knowles. My name is Sydney Beveridge. I have been working with Social Explorer for several years. I'll tell you quickly a little bit about Social Explorer and then we'll get started. Social Explorer is a website that lets people work with data, work with vast resources of data from multiple data sources, particularly including the US Census and the American Community Survey. And working with that data both in a table form, working with the numbers, and then also working with interactive maps, easy to use, very powerful, easy to customize interactive maps that you can create to do your research and then also to present it to others. So Social Explorer has been around. It started back in 1999 as a project to showcase New York City data, a project with the New York Times and the National Science Foundation, and has expanded greatly from there. I was born at Queens College in New York, and it now covers national data, even international data, well over 220 years of data, all the way from 1790 to the most recent census and American community surveys. And we're constantly adding sort of new tools, updating the data every year, sometimes more often. So lots of fun stuff to explore that we hope you'll be able to take advantage of. I also wanted to mention that a former student of Ann Knowles actually worked with us for a time, Dan Miller, who helped with some of what you might end up seeing today. All right, so before I completely dive in, I want to just point out a couple resources that you might use later on. For example, the help menu, which is located here along the top, that has detailed instructions on a lot of the things I'm going to show. So you can go back to that for some step-by-step explanation of what you can do. And then we can also point out the blog. If you scroll down on the page, we have our blog posts, which always update people on when the latest data has been released and also showcase when Social Explorer is written up in the news or something from the site is featured in the news, and also some examples of using the site, so things that you might find inspiring or help add some examples to what you're pondering. So I'm just going to double check that the volume, yeah, great. Okay, we are recording. All right, so step one, go to socialexplorer.com. You can do this from excuse me, any computer on campus will give you full access to the site automatically. Also, if you're logged onto the campus's Wi-Fi network, that will also get you to the professional license of Social Explorer. So what you would see if you're on the campus computer or on the Wi-Fi, you would see professional license provided by University of Maine here in the top right. You can also access the site remotely. For example, I looked up on the library catalog. If you look for Social Explorer, you'll come upon this record. And then if you click here, I think you type in your library barcode or whatever access codes you need, and then that'll also get you in. So you can log in from home as well. And a quick thing we always recommend to everyone who's going to be coming back to the site multiple times, you can also set up a personal account. And when you log onto the site, when you visit the site for the first time, you'll see a prompt that offers to let you sign up. So we really encourage people to do that. Then you'll be able to save and share maps and tables much more easily, and it'll also streamline your access from off campus. So just want to point that out. And we have one of the first headings in the help section is how to log in and access the site. So that'll spell that out for you. So just wanted to flag that at the top. So let's get started. There are two main ways into the site, the maps and the table. So we'll start with the maps because they look cool. So let's do that. So I just clicked on the maps tab on the top of the site here. And I'm just going to point out we have the US demography map. That's really our most popular map. We have that's where the 220 years of census data lives and gets visualized. And that might be quite a useful resource in your classes. Also wanted to point out, though, if you scroll down, you'll see some other data sets that are available to you. Some specialized data sets, election data, crime data, business data, some health data, as well as international data, World Development Indicators from the World Bank, census data, Eurostat. So these might be useful in these classes or other classes you take later on. So I'm going to go ahead and click Start Now. And this brings me to the main sort of map dashboard, I like to call it. So you're welcome to go through this little tour that'll come up the first time you visit, but I'm going to skip that right now, and we'll just get right into it. So right now, you're looking at a map, and the screen, it tells me it's population density. You can also edit this title if you want. So I'm going to say, let's see, Maine demo, see pop density. And then I'm going to click Save. And then right below the title, it'll still specify exactly what survey I'm looking at. I'm looking at the American Community Survey, which is put out by the Census Bureau. And I'm looking at the population density information. As you'll see, I'm starting to move my mouse around on the map area itself, and I'm able to see the numbers underneath for each state. So as I scroll around, you can see that start to reveal. So I'm also going to zoom in. You can zoom in a few different ways. You can double click. You can use a mouse scroll wheel. You can use the plus minus buttons over here. And we're going to start moving up to New England, and I'm going to keep zooming. And as you can see, now we're starting to see a little bit more detail on the map. Right now we're looking at the counties, and I know that because this menu here, Show Data By, if I click that, it shows the geography that you're looking at right now. So the first map, we saw the states, and now we're looking at counties. And as I keep zooming, we're going to start seeing even more detail. Now we've jumped over to census tracts. And this is a word, if you haven't run into it already, you'll probably run into it quite a bit. It's basically a small geography unit that the Census Bureau uses across the nation and has used for many decades. And census tract, you can think of it a little bit like a neighborhood, but the lines may not line up with exactly what you have in mind for a particular neighborhood, but it's essentially kind of a neighborhood unit. And the actual population within a tract, it varies depending on sort of how rural or urban the area is, but one rule of thumb is kind of around 4,000. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what you might be looking at here. As I keep zooming in, I can see some street names appear, some water features, airports, so you can see all kinds of detail, more local streets coming into view. So you can zoom in and out to start exploring the map and getting more detailed information. I'm also gonna, let's get straight over to the main campus. So over here on the left is our search bar. And actually, forgive me, I'm trying to remember. All right, so I'm going to look at the University of Maine. So let's go. I know it's very near Bangor, Maine. So I just looked up Bangor, and then the search bar gave me some suggestions. I'm going to click on this first one. I'm going to double click it, and the map is going to zoom right to Bangor, Maine. So now I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so I can see a little larger area. And there we are. So now we're in Bangor, Maine, looking at the census tract level here. So you can use that to search a city, a county, a state, a zip code, street address, whatever you need to help move the map quickly to where you need to go. So that's a little bit about how to kind of navigate the map. I'm sort of clicking and dragging it, as you might, on any number of websites or mapping websites do that. I also want to point out, so you can see the shading, the different shading, and I just want to show you how to determine exactly what that means. You can see this legend over here. I'm going to click it just so it opens up and shows a little more detail. And so we can see that shows us the areas with the least amount of population, less than 5 people per square mile, are the very palest color. And then the darkest color have over 15,000 people per square mile. So as I scroll around, I can see, the numbers that fall into these different brackets. And you can also customize the legend a little bit. That's completely optional, but just to let you know you're able to do that. You can change the colors. This might be useful if you're looking at sort of a money-related variable. You might prefer to use green, or something related to Republicans or Democrats. You might use red or blue, those kinds of things. as well as other color combinations that are available to you. You can also flip the legend, depending on sort of how you want to present things. I could flip it so that actually the lightest color means the more dense, and the darkest color means the less dense, and that's completely up to you, a style choice. And you can also change the cut points, which are those the breaks between the different legends, the 5 to 50, the 50 to 200, 200 to 500. You can experiment with this if it's useful for you. Sort of the one that I use most often if I'm doing this, I might reduce the number a little bit just to make it a little simpler, the number of different classes. And then I might change the classification method. The one I usually use is natural breaks, or Jenks, which kind of looks at the data and sees where things cluster and then uses that to make the adjustment. Again, this is completely optional, and so feel free to look up a little bit more about it if you're interested in trying that, but just wanted to point it out. So now you can see there's a little bit different way of showing the data, because there weren't as many areas over 15,000. It sort of adjusted the numbers a bit. But I'm going to go back to the defaults here, which was 11, and the category default, just for simplicity's sake. So here we are looking around a little bit. And let's see, I also want to point out that we're looking at the shaded area. You can also look at a different way to visualize things. I'm going to, well, actually, first I'll show you the change data menu, then I'll go back to that point. Okay, so first we're going to look at, right now we're looking at population density, but let's say you want to look at different information about this area. So I'm going to click change data, and let's say we're interested in looking at the racial composition of the area. So I just clicked change data, and I clicked, I'm going to stay in the year 2015. If I wanted to explore a different year, I could do so just by sliding this bar all the way back, or just a little bit, depending on what year I'm interested in. I'm going to stay in 2015 for now. And then here you can see the data is organized by category, basically kind of by topic. So we have quite a diversity of topics available to you. I'm going to click on the race category for now. And first, let's see where the white population is in Maine. And as you can see, there's a fair number in the area. So I clicked that, and now I can see the white population in Maine. Now, I'm going to do a little adjustment here just to show you another way to visualize the data. So right now we're looking at the shaded area, which relies on this legend. But I'm going to change the visualization type to dot density. So now we'll see where each red dot here represents 1,000 people. So this is another way to just show where the white people are living. So you can also customize this. I'm going to say, let's say that we want more dots. So each dot represents 200 people. Now I can see a little bit better kind of where things are. So you can adjust that depending on what you're looking at. You can also use bubble density. This is a little bit different option for you. I'm going to click on that. And so bubble density shows, it can show you up to 2 kind of pieces of information. So here, the size of the bubble is telling me a little bit more about how many people are living here, you know, how many white people are living here. And if I add percentages, I just clicked on this here again, add percentages. Now the shading, a bit, you can see that this dot is a bit darker. So that's 97% white, whereas this dot is not quite as dark. But yeah, actually, let me flip the variable so we can see a little bit better. And let me zoom out just a little bit so we can see some more. Okay, actually, let me flip the variable one more time. And as you can see, a lot of this is about trial and error. You know, just test things until you find what you like. So actually now, if I zoom out a lot more, you can see a little bit better. The size of the bubble here represents the number of white people, and the shading represents the percent. So over here, you're seeing a little bit more changes here. Like this is a lighter color bubble, but you can see kind of the size of it. So it's just another option. I'm going to go back to the shaded area, and we're going to go back to Bangor, Maine. All right, and we're just gonna zoom out one click here. Now, I'm looking right now at the white population. Social Explorer also lets you map multiple variables at a time, which can be quite useful for comparison. So I'm going to add at least one or two more racial categories to this so I can see the diversity of the area. So I'm going to click Change Data again. And as you can see, within this grouping here, the white alone population has a check mark next to it. The other ones have little boxes. I can click up to 4 more. I'm going to click Black or African American, American Indian, Alaska Native, and Asian alone. So now I have 4 different racial categories I'm looking at on a single map. And I'm going to zoom out a little bit more. And let's zoom out a little bit more, actually, so we can see. Whoop. But I'm going to keep, oh, I actually just want to point out, you can also force the geography level here. So I'm going to keep census tracts, but I'm going to look at a slightly larger area. All right, so here we are. So in Bangor, Maine, if you start to scroll around a little bit, you'll see in the legend now also there are 4 different colors, one for each of the racial categories. And as I scroll around, I can see both the numbers tell me what's going on here, and the color shows me sort of which one is the most predominant group and what percent that they are there. So as I scroll around, I can see a little bit more about the white population. Very interesting here along the river, it's actually predominantly Native American, very different numbers from other areas. And over here as well, there's a larger here, 20% Native American population. And actually, a professor pointed out to me that the Native American population is actually a reservation in the area. So you might notice interesting groupings appearing and then you can find a little bit more about the context of who's there. For example, if I mapped the age around your campus, I would probably find that the age is quite young because of so many college students, whereas other parts of the area might have a little different age breakdown. All right, so that's a way to map multiple variables and browse around that information. So I'm also going to flip over to, let's see about bringing in some more information into this map by actually putting another map next to it. So I'll show you how to do that. You'll see this gray circle at the bottom with the 2 white squares that lets you change the map display. Right now we're looking at a single map. I'm going to switch to side-by-side maps. So now I have 2 maps, right? They start out identically, but I can edit them separately. And now I can start to work with them. So here you can work with the same geography or different geographies. You can work with the different years or different variables or different locations, kind of depending on what you're trying to look at. So if you're comparing 2 different towns or 2 different cities, this is a one way to do that. So I'm going to change the data on the map on the right here. I'm going to click on income. And I'm going to, there's a very long list here you can scroll through. It has many, many options for you. Or I'm going to click on median income. And I just did that by typing in the keyword median. I'm going to click on median household income. And now I can see the median household income for the area. Nice thing about the side-by-side maps too, if I hover my mouse over this area, I could see both the median household income and the racial population, the racial breakdown here on one screen. So I might start seeing interesting patterns emerging. This census tract, which I suspect it must be along some sort of water feature or something like that, or other natural thing based on its shape. It's the one that's predominantly Native American. It also has a much lower median income than many of the other surrounding tracts. Let me see, I'm going to zoom out one click over here. Oh, and I can also link these 2 maps with this little chain link here up here between the 2 of them, just so the geographies stay locked together. And then also in the Native American reservation area, the population, again, we can see that the income is a little bit lower than in other areas. So putting together 2 maps lets you start to kind of put together some information. Depending on what you've been researching, it might be a way to help tell the story you want to share. I'll also point out you can use something called a swipe map. which is basically a two-layered map. So now there's this vertical bar with the arrows, and I can click and drag it to the left and reveal the map on the right, or I can drag it the other way and reveal the map on the left. So this is just another kind of presentation you can use for yourself or to share with others that might show sort of a little different kind of comparison. So that is also available to you. Another thing you can do is this menu bar, this little menu box here, just to the right of the table title with 3 bars here. This has a few different features. I'll just point out one of them. Others of them are a little bit more advanced. Many of them are featured on the blog, so I'd say if you're interested, do check those out as well. But here, the satellite view can be kind of neat to show how different areas are, relate to the physical world and what's going on. So you might see a lot of development in a particular area if you're interested in focusing on that, and then you can see kind of what it actually looks like. So I'm going to switch back to the data view though, because we're focusing on the data today. All right, so just checking over here. Just to point out, let's see, as I change the data, so right now on the right I have the median income in 2015. Let's say, and the racial composition on the left. Let me switch to, let's go back in time a little bit. I just want to point out, your Social Explorer makes it very easy to compare things over time, but also want to point out that sometimes the categories might be a little bit different. For example, if I want to go back to 1970 and look at race, here on the right, I see white, black, and other. Those are my only options because in 1970, that's how the Census Bureau recorded and then reported the information. Whereas more recent years, there's much more detail available on Asian population and other kind of Native American, other populations. So you could certainly browse around the 1970 list and see if there's other information available to you. But just to keep in mind that sometimes when you do, here we go, when we go from 1970 to 1980, suddenly more racial categories appear. So just to keep in mind that certain data might be a little bit differently tallied up and differently presented, not differently tallied up, differently categorized by the Census Bureau for different years, and also that certain geographies, there may not be quite as much detail available, especially when you go to the much earlier years. Let's go back in time a little bit now, actually. Because if I go back to like the 30s, I'm probably really only going to get to see the county level at a lot of places, and sometimes even less than that depending. So just keep that in mind as you're doing research. If something seems to be missing, it might be just because it wasn't reported out that way. Great, so we are moving along. I also want to point out, so I'm logged in, which makes the next thing very easy. So I'm going to save my map, and then I'm going to share it. So I'm going to click Save As. We're going to call this Maine Demo. And then I'm going to click Save. And now this map in its current form is now saved to my map gallery. And I'll show you how to access that in just a moment. I think because of the video, it's taking just a hair longer than it normally does. And then once the map is saved, it's also much easier to share in different ways. So first I'll just point out, so now that I've saved it, let's just go Social Explorer. Once you're logged in, you'll have this little button here called My Projects. And here I am in My Projects, and we have Maine Demo right at the top. So, and you can also save your reports to this gallery. I'll show the reports in just a second. So that makes that a little bit easier for you, and a great way to both work on projects, just work on saved drafts as you're going, all those kinds of things. So you can also share and export the image. I'm going to click the Share button. Here you can copy a link, which you could then hand in as homework or pass to another collaborator, that kind of thing. You can collaborate. You can also use an embed code. We use this a lot on the blog. Virtually any blog post we have has an embedded map of some kind, so you can see what that looks like. So this code you could then pop into, for example, WordPress in the HTML editor and very quickly get to see the map. So that is just another way you can share your map after you've created it. And okay, let's talk a little bit about reports, and then we'll get ready to wrap up. So you can create reports one of two ways. You can create it from the map itself or from directly from the tables. So I'm going to scale back down to one map just so I have a little more screen real estate here. I'm going to click again on this little 3-bar menu box. And now I'm going to click Create Report. And for any report, basically you have to pick the source, the geographies, and then the variable or topic that you're interested in. Those are kind of the main ingredients. So I'm already in the ACS American Community Survey 2015, which is right here. So I'm going to just go ahead with the Essentials report. Oh, let's go actually, since we're talking about race, I'll click on the race report. But basically, this is kind of a quick collection of a few tables on a particular topic. It's a good way to get started, and then you can always edit and revise. And then I'm going to click on a few geographies that I want to look at. So I'm just going to kind of arbitrarily click on a few census tracts here. And then I'm also going to grab a couple of counties. And why don't I grab the whole state as well? And then you can edit this list of geographies down here. Let's say I decide I don't want that one anymore. Or you can also edit it in the next step. So if you need to adjust things, don't worry, we can definitely do that. So now I'm going to click Create. And the Social Explorer will pop open a new window for me. And then here's my report. So here are the geographies that I requested. And you can either look at them on the screen, you can show more of them on the screen at a time. And then also I'll show you how to download it. But first I'll just show you the layout quickly. So here we have the geographies. We also have subtotals, which is very handy. Like here we have a collection of 6 counties, and then we have a summary of those 6 counties. So if you're doing a paper or something on certain counties, it'll kind of help you with the subtotals already. So just a little help. Oh yeah, so let's see here. So, and you can see we have it broken down by the table. Also, you can click on any table name to get a little more documentation from the resource, in this case, the Census Bureau. So if you scroll down here, there's just a little more explanation of what you're looking at. And you can sort of explore the reports on the screen. And you can also download them. I'll go ahead and show you how to do that now. If you click on the Excel button, this is the download I use most often. And then if you click on Excel 2017, it'll just save a file for you very quickly. And let's go ahead and open that up. And now here we have our report saved in Excel. And so then you can work with it offline. You can highlight rows. You can hand it to other people to help you, anything like that. So that's makes it a little bit easier to explore. You can also download the data if this is of interest to you to a CSV or other kind of file, which is compatible also with a number of statistical programs. So that might be useful depending on what your particular uses are. Another thing, just like the maps, you can also save any report. I'm going to go ahead and save it as map Maine demo. You can add a little description down here and then save it. And it's also going to appear in that same My Projects gallery for future reference. Also, each report has a unique URL which you can grab from the top here and share. So that's another way to keep track of your reports. Now, so I have my report here. I also want to point out you can always edit your report at any time. Let's say I decide I wanted to change my geographies a little bit. I clicked here on the geography step. And let's say I decide I want to add the US as just sort of a baseline reference. And maybe I also want to add the state of Maine. So I'm going to click that from the list. I'm going to click Add. Then I click Proceed to Tables, which is the next step. And here we have several tables were selected related to race and Hispanic status. I also want to encourage people to just take a little time to explore this huge list of tables that's available. Just as you explore, you'll get a little sense of all the different information that's available here, things on education, employment, housing, race, age, income, lots about income, even about poverty status, transportation, time to get to work, health coverage. So there's really a wealth of data available to you. So take a little time to browse through that to get a little better sense of what's available. You can also use the pre-made reports, as I pointed out, on the other screen as well, or you can search for something by keyword. For example, I know I want to use income. I'm going to use median income. I'm going to click add. And now I have that one as well. And I'm going to go ahead and look at my modified report, which has a little bit more stuff. And I can explore that on the screen or elsewhere. Also, now that I have the income variable down here, I just want to point out inflation adjustment is something you might want to keep track of, depending on what you're looking at, particularly if you're looking at income from 1980 to the present. You want to make sure you're comparing, dollars in a useful way. So here, the dollar's already adjusted to 2015 inflation rate, and you can also change that. Like, let's say, for example, I was looking at the census from 1990, and I wanted to compare incomes from a city then to present day. So I might want to adjust the inflation, and you can do that just by here, adjust the money values for inflation. And then if I were looking at the 1991, but I wanted to look at compared to the most recent data, I would click 2015. When I say most recent, but it's actually 2015, just to point out that it takes over a year for the Census Bureau to report out the data. So the most recent data source probably won't be the calendar year you're existing in at that moment. So, but it's going to be the freshest that is available. In fact, we just put up the American Community Survey 2016 one-year file, so that's also available to you. So yeah, I just want to point out, I think here, the how to start a table from scratch. So I'm going to go back to the home page, and I'm going to click the tables button. And then here you can see all the different surveys that are available to you to get your tables and reports from. Just for kicks, I'll try something different. Let me try the US Census. Let's try 1990. So I just clicked Begin Report. And let's just grab, let's see, the US. And Maine. Oh, maybe one more state. And New York. Okay. Then I'm going to proceed to tables. Let me just grab the comprehensive report. That's also a good one to start with if you just want to kind of get a little sampling of what's available. And then I clicked to the next page to show my report. So again, just like the prior report we were looking at any point you can go back and modify something. At any point you can save or share a link to your report, change the inflation rate, inflation adjustment. And you can also, of course, export this the same way as the other. So yeah, that's sort of a pretty good overview of a lot of the basic and then a little more intermediate things you can do with Social Explorer. Again, just want to point out the help section over here, which has a lot of details on a lot of things I was just looking at. And also wanted to mention again the blog, which has just a little bit of information about what's new with Social Explorer and some further examples. And if you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with us also. You can reach me directly. My first name is Sydney, just like the city, SYDNEY, @socialexplorer.com. Thanks so much, and good luck with your class.